Welcome back to Wired to Be Rich, everybody. It has been 2 weeks and I am so sorry for keeping you all waiting. But as you know, I was in Africa. If you're new here, hi, I am Manda Lea. And if you've been here before, I'm really happy that you're back. I took a 2-week hiatus and spent that time in Senegal, West Africa, and coming back, you guys, I can honestly say that I am not the same person who left. This trip changed my entire life. And I'm not saying that lightly or for effect. I mean that in a real grounded way. The way that I think, the way that I feel, what I care about, what I don't care about anymore, all of that has shifted in a way that I would never have imagined before. And this episode isn't just about me sharing what I experienced. It's really here for you too. It's about growth. But not in the way that you've been taught where you have to keep adding more, doing more, becoming more. It's about recognizing what was always yours and allowing yourself to access it without all the noise that usually surrounds you. I want this to open something up for you, whether that's how you see your life, how you move through it, or how you relate to yourself. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about what actually shifted for me while I was there, the realizations I had, the changes I've started making, and how stepping into a completely different environment showed me a lot of what I thought was necessary for my life just isn't for me anymore. So let's get into it.
She's not just a podcast host. She's a movement.
Manda Lea is teaching people how to break cycles and build real wealth, mentally, financially, and spiritually.
People all over the world are waking up to her message.
Wired to Be Rich isn't just a podcast, it's a mindset shift.
She makes you believe again in yourself, in your power, and your ability to actually have the life you always know was meant for you.
Hi everyone, I'm Manda Lea, entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of Balance and Destiny, and this is Wired to Be Rich. I didn't go to Africa to escape anything. I went to celebrate my birthday, you guys. I turned 32 this past Sunday, and I really just wanted to do something that felt meaningful to me. Something that felt like an experience instead of a production, right? I wasn't interested in doing what I had always done before or what people expect you to do on your birthday. I wanted to be somewhere that felt different, somewhere that allowed me to just exist in a new way. And Senegal gave me that. When I first got there, I'm not even going to lie to you all, it was a real transition for me. Senegal is a French-speaking country, you guys, and it's not one of those places where you can get by on just basic words or hope that people will switch to English for you. The drivers, the people working in restaurants, just everyday interactions, French is the language. So I had to actually be present in a different way. I had been studying French for a couple months before I even went. And I'm really grateful that I did do that because I was able to actually hold conversations, ask for what I needed, what I wanted, understand people, and that changed my entire experience. There's something about being in a place where you can't really rely on autopilot that forces you to slow down and pay attention. I had to listen more, think before I speak, be intentional with how I communicated, and that alone pulled me out of my head in a way that I didn't expect. It made every interaction feel more real because I just couldn't move through it quickly or casually. I had to actually be there for it and be present. Of course, I did the tourist things. I explored, I saw the city, I experienced what people usually come there to experience, but what really stood out to me were the people that I met. I connected with a lot of locals and people from multiple parts of the world, you guys, people who live there, work there, build their lives there, and those conversations felt different. They felt grounded, present, and honest in a way that I don't always experience back home. The interactions also just kind of really made you realize how small you really are, or how big the world really is. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But there wasn't this constant pressure and interactions, no underlining expectations, no need to perform or present yourself in a certain way. People were just being, you guys. And that allowed me to be the same way, if I'm being honest. I wasn't thinking about how I was coming across or something I could turn into. I was just engaging, learning, laughing, asking questions, and letting moments be what they were without trying to shape them into something else. And I think that's what started to open something up for me early on in the trip. Just being in conversations that weren't driven by anything other than genuine connection and interest made me realize how much I had gotten used to interactions having some kind of direction or purpose. Being there showed me that it doesn't always have to be like that. And honestly, it felt better not having that weight attached to every moment. I really let myself experience people while I was there also, and that ended up being one of the most impactful parts of the trip for me. I went on dates. I met people from all over the world: Paris, Germany, Sweden, Cameroon, different parts of the US. And what stood out wasn't just where they were from, it was how everyone showed up. Again, there were no pressure behind the conversations, no hidden agendas from anyone, no sense that anything needed to turn into something. Even the business connections I made weren't planned at all. I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't trying to network or force someone to be a part of my brand or be a part of my a business or a professional sphere. But the connections, they happened naturally just through being present and open. And that made the conversations feel even more aligned. The dating experience alone shifted something in me also. It felt completely different than what I'm used to, you guys, here in America. The men I met weren't leading with questions that try to categorize you or figure out where you fit in their life. There wasn't this immediate need to define anything or assess me. They weren't asking what I do for work in a way that felt transactional or trying to figure out how I would show up for them. They already knew who they were. So they weren't approaching me from a place of comparison or competition. They were just genuinely interested in me as a woman, as a person. And that felt refreshing in a way that's hard to explain until you actually experience it. I was able to go on dates without attaching anything to them. There were no expectations, no pressure for it to lead anywhere, no need to figure anything out. I was in a completely different country, so I allowed myself to just be in the moment and receive the experience for what it was. And because of that, the connections felt more real. I wasn't in my head. I wasn't thinking ahead. I wasn't trying to control anything. I was just present. There was one guy in particular that I connected with, and what stood out to me was that how natural everything felt. Nothing felt forced about it, right? He wasn't trying to impress me with his status or by taking me somewhere just to prove a point. He showed me parts of his actual life. We went to places that meant something to him, places he had history with, local spots that were known for their food, places you wouldn't even think to go if you were just visiting. We got ice cream. We drove around the city. We talked. We laughed, and it just felt real. He wasn't performing, and neither was I. And because of that, I didn't feel the need to perform either. It created space for something genuine, even if it was just for a moment, I mean. And it wasn't just with him. That energy carried through all of my interactions, the women I met, the friendships I was building. Everything felt open and honest. I remember sitting on a rooftop by the ocean with this one girl in particular who lives in New Jersey currently. And she was here visiting because she had been teaching there the year before, and she just came back because she loves Senegal so much. And when we were just talking, we were having a drink, taking in the moment, and the conversation just naturally got deeper. We ended up talking about how much our lives have changed, how different things feel now compared to a few years ago, and just the reality of where we were in that moment, sitting in another country, connecting with people from all over the world, speaking different languages, experiencing something that felt so far removed from our normal lives. Like I said, we weren't just speaking English either. There were moments where we were moving between French, Wolof, and English, and it created this sense of like connection that went beyond surface level conversations. Because by the end of it, we were both emotional, and I'm not even joking with you. Like it wasn't coming from a heavy place. It was more of an acknowledgement of growth, of how far we've come, how different life can look when you allow yourself to step outside of what you're used to. That entire experience showed me what it feels like to interact without pressure, without expectation, without trying to make something happen. And I didn't realize how much I needed that until I was in it. It allowed me to relax in a way that I hadn't been able to do before. And I could feel it in my body. My nervous system felt naturally calm. I wasn't anticipating anything. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't trying to control outcomes. I was just there, fully present. And that changed everything for me. Now, while I was there, as some of you saw on my social media, I finished this book called The Mountain Is You. If you have not gotten that book, if you listen to nothing else I say, go and get that book, life-changing. life-changing. And I don't think I could have picked a better place or time to finish that book because everything I was reading lined up with what I was actually experiencing day to day. After having all of these interactions with people, going on dates, building connections that felt light and genuine, and just moving through life without pressure, the book made me really sit with what was different about that experience compared to how I've been living back home. It helps me put language to something I was already feeling but hadn't fully processed yet. One of the biggest things that came clear to me was the difference in culture, especially when it comes to how people relate to each other. Here in America, so much of our thinking and behavior is centered around relationships. That's all the content you see, right? There's always a conversation about what people should be doing, how they should show up, what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not. And there are so many expectations, so many rules, and so many opinions that people are constantly trying to navigate. And even beyond relationships, there are so many things that we normalize here that we think are good or productive or just a part of life, but they're actually not good for us in any real way. The constant pressure to always be doing something right, always working towards something, always improving, always planning the next move. The way stress is so normalized here that people bond over it. The way being busy is seen as a sign of importance. The way people are always thinking ahead instead of just being present. The way we overconsume information, overanalyze our lives, and we feel like we need to have everything figured out. And I'm not saying Senegal doesn't have its own culture because it absolutely does. It has structure, it has tradition, it has religion, and it has its own way of doing things. But what stood out to me is that it didn't feel like people were operating from this constant need to define and control every interaction. The men I connected with, and I connected with a lot of them, weren't approaching me with a set of questions to figure out who I was supposed to be to them. They weren't trying to assess me or place me into a category based off of first meeting. There wasn't this immediate pressure to determine roles or expectations. Every conversation felt natural, like they were just getting to know me without trying to shape the interaction into something specific. And that was very different from what I'm used to. Here, it's so common for conversations to quickly turn into evaluations. Like literally, you guys, like I can't tell you how many times I'll connect with brand new friends or may connect with a gentleman and we talked for that very first night and they start asking all kind of deep questions that are material based or, well, what do you have? It's always like you're being assessed every single time you talk to people. And that's very heavy here in America. I've noticed that. People want to know what you do, how you think, how you move, what kind of partner you would be. And all of that happens very early. There's this underlying need to define things before they even have a chance to naturally develop. Being in Senegal showed me that it doesn't have to be like that. The conversations I had felt open, present, and honest. People weren't coming into interactions with a mindset shaped by all of these external narratives about how things are supposed to go. They were just engaging for the sake of connection. Even the overall lifestyle reflected that difference. People were moving, things were getting done, but there wasn't this constant sense of urgency. It felt efficient, but like not rushed. And there was space to breathe and be present and to actually enjoy what was happening without feeling like you needed to be somewhere else or doing something else. And finishing that book, in the middle of all of that, made something really clear to me. A lot of the pressure we feel isn't coming from life itself. It's coming from the expectations we've accepted as normal. The timelines we think we need to follow, the way we think our lives are supposed to look, the roles we think we need to play, all of that creates a level of stress that we don't even question because it's been so normalized. And it made me realize that I've been participating in that without even realizing it. Not because I didn't know any better, but because it's what I've been surrounded by. And stepping outside of that environment allowed me to see it for what it really was, or for what it is. I also realized that people there seemed more grounded in who they are without needing to constantly explain or prove it. Not because they have everything figured out, but because they're not as consumed with trying to meet expectations that are constantly changing. They're just living their lives in a way that feels natural to them. And that shifted something in me because it made me see that a lot of what we stress ourselves over isn't actually necessary. We create pressure by trying to follow timelines that don't really exist, by trying to perform our lives in a way that we think makes sense, by chasing things that we've been taught are important without stopping to question if they actually matter to us. Being there made me realize that I don't want to move like that anymore. Not because there's anything wrong with where I come from, but because I can see that there's another way to experience life that feels more aligned for me. Coming back to America felt loud, like not physically, I mean like energetically. It made me remember that everything here is so rushed. It's transactional. Everything is driven by what's next. There's a constant dopamine addiction, a constant loop for more. And especially when it comes to relationships, it's like everyone is either chasing love, healing from love, or trying to define love. And I realized I don't align with that anymore. Not the chasing, not the confusion, not the constant emotional roller coaster. Like this past weekend, I was talking to some people and they were just saying like, oh, you don't ever want the ball to be in someone else's court. You never want someone to have the upper hand. And I'm just like, oh, all of that is too mentally taxing. And who cares? It feels like a hamster wheel. And once you see it, like once you actually really see it, you can't unsee it anymore. I used to think growth meant becoming more, like more successful, more accomplished, more structured. But now growth feels like release. Releasing timelines, releasing pressure, releasing identities that don't fit anymore. And when you outgrow your environment, it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just quiet clarity. Like, I don't belong here anymore. Not in a negative way, not in a judgmental way, just in a knowing. And I think that's where I am now. So yeah, I didn't come back with a 5-step plan. I didn't come back with a new goal list. I came back with peace and a new perspective on my life and the life around me. I came back with clarity, with softness, with a deeper trust in myself. And honestly, that feels like wealth. If you're in a space where things don't feel the same anymore, where your environment feels a little too small, where you're starting to question everything you once wanted, you're not lost, you're evolving. And that's a beautiful place to be. So thank you so much for being here with me today. For real, I really do appreciate it, you guys. And as always, I will see you in the next episode. Bye.